Turn out the lights, the Christmas party is over down in Florida. The snowflakes still can't handle the birthday of Jesus Christ the King. Speaking of Christ the King, Candace Owens is in the news again, and a lot of people are telling her to, well, shut up. So is it time for us to throw the world's #1 podcaster under the bus? Speaking of fake and gay, turns out we were right 3 years ago when we said the Canadian residential school scandal was a hoax. A new documentary exposes one of the most anti-Catholic hate campaigns in history. And finally, the Chartres pilgrimage registration opens up again, and a new book on the Cristero War rips the mask off the Freemasonic plot to eradicate the Catholic Church from Mexico. Hello again, ladies and gentlemen. I am Michael Matt, and this is the Remnant Underground. You know, everybody these days is living in virtual reality. That's just the way it is. That's the new world order, I guess, living online. And here's kind of a weird question. Have you ever dreamt about your screen? I mean, your TV screen, your computer monitor, iPad, whatever, cell phone screen, whatever. Think about all the time people spend online, and it's funny that screens apparently never appear in anyone's dreams. At least that's what people are saying, and I want to get to the bottom of this. I got a notion on why this would be, by the way, but I want to see what everybody in this audience says first. So if you have ever dreamt about your screen, please let me know in the comments, and we'll talk about this next week. Speaking of crazy.
New at 6, lights on a nativity scene in Satellite Beach are getting shut off.
A couple is upset because the city shut down their display.
It was kind of like a traditional nativity scene with maybe a modern twist. It had some stained glass windows and some golden illumination on it.
But an anonymous tip pulled the plug on the project. The couple says the city asked them to turn off the lights. Satellite Beach City Code is very particular about lighting, mostly due to concerns over sea turtle nesting season.
Yes, the sea turtles are nesting, ladies and gentlemen. It's time to cancel Christmas. This reminds me of the Chartres pilgrimage some years ago. We used to have Mass in this beautiful spot in this huge, beautiful woods, somewhere between Paris and Chartres. And the government told us we could no longer have our Mass there because the sound of pilgrims praying created noise pollution, which was harmful for the trees. Noise, yeah, so... But Walter, back that up a little bit. I think there's some evidence that this is what this is really about, right on this little clip that we just showed. There it is. Yep. See, that's it. Christ is King is being projected on the wall of the building. That's the bigger problem. We can't have Christ the King polluting the city down there in Florida. So, and speaking of Candace Owens, Candace is in the news again this week. And I know everyone has very strong opinions about Candace Owens, how Candace should be doing her job. She's now #1 podcaster in the world, but we all are rushing to tell Candace Owens to, kind of straighten up and do a better job. I get it. But I don't care where you come down on Candace. I got a question. Whether Candace Owens is infallible or not, in all the different things she's investigating right now, whether she's right in every case or not, every time or not, here's the thing. Why does she have the #1 podcast in the world right now if, as her critics say, she's a complete lunatic? What's going on here? I mean, the woman has launched herself into international superstardom, attracting the attention of presidents and kings and popes and everyone, right? And it all started when she proclaimed what? Oh, the kingship of Christ, that's right. And ever since Candace Owens said that Christ is king, she's been questioning everything about the Christophobic global order and the lies that these people tell. So again, why are so many people listening to Candace Owens? Why aren't they listening to the Republican Party elite? Why aren't they listening to Turning Point USA as much? Why aren't they listening to the folks with the big bucks over at Heritage Foundation in D.C.? And I wonder if maybe it does have literally something to do with the fact that Candace Owens, first of all, proclaims that Christ is king, and then compares all the crazy going on in the world right now, culturally, in the church, in the state, right? Compares all of that to the social kingdom of Jesus Christ.
Ladies and gentlemen, Candace Owens.
If you really want to know what's going on in the world, you're being propagandized to believe it's this country versus this country. It's very simple. It's always been a war against Christ. Everything makes sense when you understand that it's a war against Christ.
Maybe that's it. And I want to talk about that a little bit tonight, because it's a fascinating phenomenon. Again, whatever you think of Candace Owens, fascinating phenomenon that this woman who's asking all the toughest questions nobody wants to ask has the #1 podcast in the world. So we're going to talk about that in a moment. But first, of course, it's always necessary for us to keep the lights on down here in the underground. Our sponsor tonight is Charity Mobile. Charity Mobile has a phone plan for every need, including one without data if you just want to talk and text. And all their monthly plans are under $50. Can't beat it. Right now, they're running a Christmas special through February 2nd. Why February 2nd? Because they do Christmas the old-fashioned way, which is the Catholic way. And every new phone line gets a free phone, plus free activation, free shipping, and a free power bank. So make the switch while supplies last. Don't give your hard-earned money to phone companies who don't appreciate you or your beliefs. Charity Mobile also sends 5% of your monthly plan price to the charity of your choice, including the Remnant, if you so desire. So go to CharityMobile.com and use the code RTV at checkout. Also, before I forget, Walter, I think we have a clip of this one. This is the new documentary on Kilimanjaro from last year, which has just come out recently. We premiered it at the Catholic Identity Conference.
Not every day that a priest gets to celebrate the Mass outside in this beautiful place.
This Mass is worth suffering for, it's worth climbing mountains for, it's worth dying for.
A mixture of adventure and faith. I absolutely love it.
So I think what we'll do is we'll put the link to the whole documentary. It's all set to go. It's powerful, really well done documentary. So definitely check that out, share it if you will, and let's get the word out on that as we prepare for another venture to Singida in the summer to continue to support the missions in Africa, which are doing such great work. And speaking of the Latin Mass, next week then, the other documentary that we're looking forward to is our Latin Mass Explained video, which is going to be a video series, and it's going to drop next week, maybe the week after, somewhere in there. It's going to come out in several installments, and it's going to go into everything. All the questions that you might have if you're new to the Latin Mass. Why Latin? Why ad orientem? Why communion on the tongue? What's going on? What does everything up there on the altar even mean? Really have a nice informal discussion of every aspect of the Mass, including the history of the Mass, the theology of the Mass that you can possibly think of. And as I sit down here so many times in the underground, we're not some sort of Latin elitist club for liturgy snobs. The war on the Latin Mass is a war on Catholic tradition. You see, it affects all of us, friends. I hate that. It's like part of the polarizing thing, which we're going to discuss here in a minute about the internet, is that everybody seems like you bring up something like the Latin Mass and you're attacking someone else's tribe who doesn't have the Latin Mass, or you're attacking someone who doesn't understand those arguments. That is so far from the truth of what we're trying to do. We're trying to explain the revolution in the Catholic Church with special emphasis on what happened to the Mass, to the liturgy of our fathers. It goes back all the way to apostolic times. It is not some sort of weird indictment of people who don't know about the Latin Mass yet or don't have access to it. That's completely antithetical to the mission. The traditional Latin Mass movement is not about preferences. My preferences shouldn't matter to you. Who cares? It's not what I prefer. It's what happened. What is this revolution doing? What has it done? And where does it want to go in the future? And we're right at the heart and center of it. But to really understand our role in all of this, we have to understand the Latin Mass, what it really means and what it really is all about. And it has nothing to do with liturgical preference. Okay? So that video series, I'm so excited about it. It's for newbies, it's for old-timers who want to review, but especially I think it's for mainstream priests who are interested in learning more about this Latin Mass issue. I think, fathers, you're going to really appreciate this from a priest's point of view and from a layman's point of view, because the two of us have a discussion all the way through. And we're going to get into that a little bit tonight, because this is war. and the traditional Mass is the touchstone of our faith. So if we're trying to be warriors, soldiers of Jesus Christ, we have to understand that touchstone. We have to have that touchstone. We have to unite around it, right? Because right now, as I said last week, friends, things are happening that are deeply disturbing, very concerning, not just to me, but to all of us. Something is happening to us, to all of us. Social media is obviously playing a big part in it. I think social media is changing us. It's almost transhumanizing us. But for sure, it's tearing us apart. It is tearing us apart right now. There is a bizarre circular firing squad in which way too many of us, spend too much time shooting at each other instead of as I said last time, the enemies, the people who really, truly hate Christ. That's where the emphasis should be. But I don't know what it is, this weird phenomenon with social media, whatever it is, this virtual living that we're doing, this demonic new order that we're doing, which is Christophobic in so many ways, psychologically damaging in so many ways. I don't know, with AI, virtual reality, narcissism, whatever, it's changing us into something else. And so I would say, once again, the Latin Mass comes to the rescue because it's like a crucifix to the online vampirism that we're all dealing with right now. Because you don't get to do that sort of thing. You don't get to be a narcissist at the Latin Mass. You are silent. You are anonymous. You're humble. You're penitent. You're on your knees. And you're allowing someone who deserves and who has earned the right to lead you from the altar, the priest. And you humbly kneel and follow his direction as you seek to have him lead you in worship of Almighty God. This is antithetical to everything the online experience is teaching us right now. So we have this crazy sort of, like, as I say, this circular firing squad, mutual assured destruction for everything and everyone that we disagree with. So they say that somebody like Candace Owens is obviously crazy. Well, maybe. Who's not? Maybe I am. Maybe you are, right? But the folks that she's up against, that we're all up against right now, are more than just insane. They're mostly in league with the forces of hell itself. So what I would say in the case of somebody like a Candace Owens is maybe we should just let the woman do her thing. If she's wrong, she'll be exposed in good time, and her podcast will no longer be the #1 podcast in the world. It will crash and burn, right? So if she's wrong, she's going to crash and burn. If she's right, the Christophobic psychos, who she's lining herself up against, will lose finally, and the truth will set a lot of people free. Thank God for her, that somebody is asking tough questions of a Christophobic demonic regime which never stops lying to us.
Turning now here to France, where abortion rights have officially entered the Constitution. The amendment passed overwhelmingly by lawmakers earlier this week was sealed into the document using a 19th century printing press. That ceremony at the Place Vendôme in central Paris was open to the public, a very symbolic moment planned to coincide with International Women's Day. Well, in a speech, French President Emmanuel Macron said he wants to add abortion rights into the Charter of the European Union as well. Take a listen.
You see? And I kind of get it on a lower level. I've gone through things like what she's going through right now, whether Ukraine or Gaza or whatever. Just a couple of years ago, I dared to question the settled science about the residential schools. You remember this? The media were spoon-feeding us the truth about those evil nuns and priests up in Canada who were killing and eating children in the residential schools just for the fun of it. And at that time, I was told that only a nutcase would dare question the settled historical science on the truth about the residential schools. Do you remember? A lot of people, even in this audience, called me a nutcase, just like they're calling Candace a nutcase, for questioning this and for asking these kinds of questions. Francis just today came out again, railing against fake news. You see that? Telling Catholics they need to stop with the fake news as he's getting ready to go to Canada on a road show and starring himself. It's all about massive and exposed fake news involving graveyards that don't exist, bodies that don't exist, no evidence whatsoever But Francis is taking that fake news, taking it all the way to town.
A major part of the Pope's trip to Canada is to apologize for the past conduct of Christians in regard to the treatment of Indigenous peoples in Canada. More than 150,000 Native children were forced to attend state-funded Christian schools from 1831 to 1996. The realities of the schools were brought to light last year when the remains of 215 children were found outside of a school in British Columbia. The Pontiff on Sunday saying that this trip is only part of the Church's attempts to right the wrongs of the past.
Well, Candace, this is probably the worst case of fake news that I have ever seen in Canada. Not a single student has been identified. No grave has been identified as belonging to a student. No body has been exhumed. There is actually no evidence at all that these are the graves of students who died at residential school.
What Francis is doing is contributing and endorsing the movement that's been knocking down Christopher Columbus statues down here in the States for how long? A long time. Rewriting history. Well, today it's changed. News story after news story about the Canadian government giving up on the fake and gay lie about the residential schools. Exactly as we told you. It was a lie almost 3 years ago, I think. Should we have shut up back then because it wasn't popular to ask questions? When people were calling us a nutcase and racist and whatever? No. That's a good use for the internet. Ask the questions that nobody else is. And now the truth in Canada, the truth is coming out. Turns out Canadians were being accused of genocide for no reason at all. Canadian Catholics, priests, nuns were being accused of genocide in that case. And now there's a new documentary out, which I highly recommend. It's making it all very clear that this entire story, as we said 3 years ago, was based on a lie.
In May of 2021, the Kamloops Indian Band issued a press release announcing their discovery of the remains of 215 children buried on the grounds of an old boarding school located on their reserve.
Thousands of Indigenous children died of abuse and neglect.
Forcibly separated, taken from their parents, and forced to attend the schools. Many were subjected to abuse, rape, and malnutrition.
Most residential schools were run by the Catholic Church on behalf of the government.
Canada's leaders are endorsing the burning of churches. Quote, burn it all down.
In the wake of this announcement, over 100 churches were burned or vandalized, and Indigenous tribes across the country made similar claims of discovered burials. Canadians all believed the evidence of these horrific atrocities seemed indisputable.
There are new developments regarding a 2021 story out of Canada.
Stories dominated the headlines around the world. It is now believed that the stories of these mass graves could be false.
And we're used to this, living in a lie, aren't we? We talked about this a long time ago. We talked about it, especially during when the Iraq War happened. We really lived through it then. We were deceived, the deception, the war propaganda, the neocon nonsense, right? Deceived most of the world. COVID, the settled science of COVID and vaccinations, deceived most of the world. The Ukraine thing now is in a complete free fall of nonsense. Well, right out of the gate, we were against that, right? We knew what was going on. That was NATO waging war on Russia through the proxy of Ukraine. We told you that down here. Now it's all coming true, and everybody's like, well, you know what? Let's not talk about Ukraine anymore. Not too much, right? But if we had just talked about it at the time, and if we were just aware of how stupid and how they're lying constantly, a bunch of people wouldn't have had to die this time, People dying all over the world because of this. We have to become skeptical every single time they tell us something. Now we're going into Venezuela. We'll tackle that one next week. But what I'm saying is we've lived through this so many times, friends. It's going to be the same every single time. The pattern isn't going to change. It's going to be the same, whether it's COVID, Ukraine, Iraq, Gaza, Afghanistan. It doesn't matter. It's all going to be the same. So again, if somebody is asking questions, well, I would say, like Candace Owens, well, carry on, Candace, and watch your back. Because what concerns me much more than tough questions, what concerns me much more is this growing apprehension in our own camps, among the children of light, among the good people, apprehension or fear of standing up and asking the questions that need to be asked. Sort of a fear, kind of a tendency to do what we're told now, because it's safer that way. Just to go along with whatever the narrative is, whatever the current thing is. Which comes from a lack of confidence, I think. It comes from a lack of faith. We're all afraid. What do we believe? How strong is this thing? How powerful is God? Right? And so we're starting to be seduced a little bit and intimidated and terrified by the revolution. Unwilling now to kind of stand up, friends, and be losers for Jesus Christ. You see? But that's what has to happen. That's what the martyrs did, all the way down to the little martyrs in the Colosseum. They were willing to be little losers for Christ, which is why we're still telling a story, which is why history was changed, because of their faith, which inspired their courage. And they changed the world. We're not going to vote our way out of this. We're not going to MAGA our way out of this either. We have to return to the social kingship of Jesus Christ. We have to return to our roots, to our identity as Christians, to the things like the Latin Mass and the Rosary and everything that worked for 1,000 years, because nothing they're doing right now is working. And so we are the victims of controlled opposition, increasingly of controlled opposition. The revolution is telling us who the good guys are and who the bad guys are. And at this point, the good guys are just yesterday's bad guys. That's just the reality. And good guys are just a little bit better than the worst of the bad guys at the moment. Because the revolution controls the bad guys. And they control the not-so-bad guys. Where are the good guys? Well, guess what? We're supposed to be the good guys. We're supposed to be the ones who are building a social kingship of Jesus Christ, who are proclaiming that, building Christendom back up to become the true good guys who will fight against the evil like abortion and gay marriage and everything else the conservatives have completely bought into now. That's our job. And we're afraid. And when they say, throw Candace Owens under them, oh yes, sir, we certainly will, because we're reasonable. We're not like that person. We're reasonable. We don't want to be reasonable to the revolution. Because in the end, no matter who wins, if we continue along this road, the revolution comes out on top. If they define who the good guys are and who the bad guys are, and they make us choose a little side, and everybody's basically on their side, pardon my French, but we're screwed. It's over. So yes, question everything you're being told. Question everyone who's telling you what you're being told. Question it all. And recognize that the truth is somewhere in the middle. This is one of those things that they say the devil likes to, even the devil can quote scripture. So when you start talking about certain things, you can say, for example, Aristotle's philosophy, the tenets of his, in medio stat virtus, right? Which means in the middle stands virtue. So on the internets, when you say something like that, favorably, people are going to say, you're a fence sitter, man. In the middle stands virtue. No, I say it like it is. Right? Because we've been so dumbed down. We can't understand some of these concepts anymore. But we need to try. Right? In the middle stands virtue. In the extremes, both sides, this is where the devil plays. This is what the revolution wants. This is polarization. So yes, in the middle is the virtue. Not to be confused with fence-sitting, not to be confused with mediocrity, right? For Aristotle, the virtue is finding the balance, and that's what we need to do, because St. Thomas Aquinas said the same thing. In medio stat virtues, courage is the virtue, says Aristotle, that balances the extremes of cowardice on the one hand and recklessness on the other. And we're seeing a lot of that today, aren't we? Cowardice on the one hand and recklessness on the other, which makes no room for sound strategy, either in politics or in the church. And that's a problem. Because as Catholics, what we need is virtue. We need the virtues, and that's the thing. The virtues are the things that are disappearing online. They're almost completely gone now. No consideration that that person at the other end of your little keyboard is a fellow soldier of Jesus Christ, is a temple of the Holy Ghost, right? That's the revolution at work. Remove virtue from all of this. And we desperately need virtue. We desperately need wisdom, prudence, right? We can't become reactionaries, friends. Just constantly reacting without putting it through the filter of virtue, of Catholic teaching, of morality, of charity. You see, because as soon as we do that, if we ignore all of that, what happens? We become them. We become the thing we're trying to fight. And so to do this, to accomplish this at a time when the shepherd has been struck, when the church is a mess, Vatican and chaos, right? To do that, we need the help of each other. We try to stick together with people who are keeping the faith. Stand with the children of light. Don't anathematize them. Don't rip their faces off. Right? Even if you disagree a little bit with people who can say the creed and mean it, we need to stand with them, stick together, unite the clans, the remnant of believers. It needs each other. We all need each other right now. Because we're dangerously close, friends. And you've all felt this. We're dangerously close to the kind of mobocracy that brought down the French monarchy, that beheaded the Catholic kings and queens of Catholic countries in Europe. The Freemasonic revolution is good at mobocracy, turning us into an unruly mob. We even have the thumbs up and thumbs down, don't we? So it's all about online, thumbs up, thumbs down. It's weird, isn't it? It's all happening again. And this online virtual mob is getting more vicious every day. And what's happening, if we don't stop it, we're allowing ourselves to be manipulated into a kind of tribalism that preaches that prudence and wisdom are basically cowardice and false compromise. We're all hearing that now. You caution a little bit of understanding and patience and charity with people with whom you disagree, and you're called a fence sitter and a coward and a faggot. You gotta say it like it is. We're becoming them when that happens. We will tear each other apart and call it saying it like it is. And the only ones that win when we do that, the revolutionaries themselves. Because we forgot charity, that charity is the most important thing of all. That comes first. And then, as I say, in the end, if we let this continue, we become the very thing that we set out to oppose. We become them. And while we do that, while we busy ourselves with our circular firing squads and our mutually assured destruction for everybody that doesn't see things exactly like we do, guess what? The revolution against the cross of Christ advances with little to no opposition because we're busy fighting each other. Why? Because we want to be winners. We want to be winners. We want to be losers. We don't want to be part of the remnant of believers, some obscure little remnant of the biblical remnant. Really? You mean like the holdouts of Christianity kept the faith? We don't want to be part of that. That's a tiny little minority, this remnant. This isn't a mighty movement that's going to make countries great again. It's a minority of Christians, just like the early Christians. Rome trampled all over them, didn't they? Killed them, killed their children, right? But in the end, who wins? The ones who kept the faith, the little ones, the little people. And that's what we need to aspire to be. Tell the stories of the Vendeans in France. Those are the original traditional Catholics. They gave up everything. Their jobs, their homes, their families, their lives, right? The Vendeans in Western France, right? Original traditionalists. But we don't want to be them. They're losers, just like the early Christians of the Colosseum. Losers. They lost. We don't want to become the Cristeros down in Mexico, right? Because why? Because they lost. We don't lose. We want victory now, man, in this world. No, we don't want to see that our victory is celebrated by future generations. You can't tweet that. Who's going to know? But the thing is, friends, I'll close on this. The Vendeans are not saints. They're just regular guys like us. The Cristeros are not saints. They're just regular people like us, just like us. Read their stories, friends. They had children that they loved. They had wives, they had fathers, husbands, daughters. They had dreams. They had good lives, just like us. But in the end, they became losers for Christ's sake. And that's what we have to have the conversation about. Are we willing to go that far? Are we willing to be losers in the eyes of the world? And if you don't know what I'm talking about, educate yourself. I got some Christmas gifts here, Christmas gift ideas. It's Christmas. Give yourself or a friend an education, right, that will make it very clear to them and to all of us what we have to be ready to do. More than just praying, it's more than the rosary, more than the Mass in this sense. Also, it's understanding the history and what our forefathers did before us. We talk a lot about the immediate traditional Catholic pioneers back in the 70s and 80s, right? Well, this movement goes back a long ways further than that. One of the books that I would really like to recommend tonight for you by Michael Davies. We published it after we took a group of Americans down and pilgrims down into the Vendee, which is in western France. This is a place where the original traditional Catholics kept the faith, wore the rosary around their neck as part of their uniform, and the Sacred Heart, which I wear here, it's up on that flag behind me, we've talked about this before. And then they laid down their lives for the Mass and for the faith of their fathers. That's how they fought the political forces of the day, the tyrannical revolution of the day, which is the same as the same tyrannical revolution we face today. This is called For Altar and Throne, The Rising in the Vendee by Michael Davies. Highly recommend it. Order this book and tell your children the story that will change their lives.
Morning on the last day. Salve Regina, the spires of Chartres rise up out of a far-off horizon. The tricolors, emblazoned with the Sacred Heart of Jesus, gather for one last day of walking. Why the Sacred Heart? Because these are the sons and daughters of the Vendee, the royal and Catholic army of peasants, who during the French Revolution gave their lives for altar and throne. Outlaw priests offered outlawed masses in the woods of the Vendee under the cover of night. They gave their lives rather than betray the Church during a reign of terror which saw Catholic kings, queens, priests, and nuns slaughtered in the streets of Paris. The Vendeans were the original guardians of tradition, and their flags were emblazoned with the Sacred Heart of Jesus because Saint Louis-Marie Grignon de Montfort had planted the faith so deeply in the Vendee that some 500,000 Catholics fought and died for it. As one walks the road to Chartres, the spirits of the Vendeans walk alongside, reminding the pilgrim that the Vendeans did not lose the war, that the faith of our fathers will endure forever, even unto the consummation of the world, and the gates of hell will not prevail.
By the way, I will be leading the U.S. chapter. Please, thanks be to God and God willing, for the 35th time. Done this a long time, this pilgrimage. Yikes. 35th time coming up in 2026, next summer. We're going to walk the 3-day, 2-night pilgrimage from Paris to Chartres. 20,000 people on hand, maybe a lot more. We talked about that a few shows ago. And so we're going to wait and see on the numbers, but it's going to be huge. We're going to go back to the Chartres pilgrimage, and after the Chartres pilgrimage, guess what? We're going back to the Vendee to tell the stories again. This time we're going to visit these little islands off the coast of western France where the Vendeans and their wives and their children went during the French Revolution to try to outlive the revolution, if you will, and to fight and to die for the very same faith that we live and we defend today. So if you want to join us on that pilgrimage back to the Vendee, click the link below. I think our registration opens on December 10th, and it's going to sell out really quickly. It always does. Now, there's another story I'm going to leave you with. If you prefer the Spanish version, the French version of Catholic counterrevolution, here is another. This is a new book. I really, really want to promote this book. This is not our book, but it's called The Cristero Counterrevolution and the Battle for the Soul of Mexico by Father Javier P. Oliveira Ravasi. Now here's the thing. This book tells the same story as the Vendee, the same Freemasonic revolution, These books are basically the same, just different characters, and of course, they're on two different continents. But it's exactly the same story. The same persecution of the Christians, of the Catholics, of the Latin Mass, of priests, of the traditional Catholic Church, as I say, just a different continent. As far as I'm concerned, this is now the definitive account of the Cristero War to date. And you're going to be shocked, truly shocked, by the first few chapters of this book, which read, friends, I'm not kidding you, read just like news reports ripped right from today's headlines. Today, in the present. The tightening of the noose around the necks of Christians, the abolition of any freedom to practice the Catholic faith is getting closer to that all around the world, including in this country. The campaign against the priesthood, campaign against the Catholic liturgy, campaign against the Catholic Church, and of course, traditional Latin Mass. It all happened just 100 years ago in Mexico, and this book tells the whole story. Finally, and by the way, you learn in this book, it got so brutal that the Vatican had to call for armed resistance in Mexico. I didn't realize this until I read this book. The Vatican itself called for it. What didn't just develop in Mexico. The Vatican said, you have no other choice. You have no legal recourse for Mexican Catholics, so you need to go full-on military resistance, resistance against a truly demonic persecution in this Freemasonic government in Mexico. So the Vatican essentially called a crusade. It got so bad. So read this book and remove your own blindfold. I want to stress, I have nothing to gain from this. This is not a Remnant title. It was published by our friend Dr. Peter Kwasniewski on his OSUST Press, and I'll just put a link down below, and you can order your copy and tell that story this Christmas as well. And I'm sorry, but no political party is going to save us from what's coming if we don't turn back to God. No political party. And I'm talking turn back to Jesus Christ the King. That's what has to happen. Otherwise, it's just going to keep happening, keep devolving. Have you noticed? What's her name? Marjorie Taylor Greene talked about that. It just doesn't seem to matter anymore. It doesn't matter who you vote for. It's all going to be the same result, right? I could totally sympathize. Walter, maybe you can throw a little bit of that up on the screen, where this is not a traditional Catholic, but she's experienced the same thing no matter what happens. No matter who you vote for. It seems like they always win, and we never make any advances. Well, that's because the social kingship of Christ has been rejected. Everything began unraveling since then, and until it's restored, until the proclamation of the social kingship is restored in our minds, our homes, our hearts, right, our towns, our countries, it's going to continue this way.
Americans are used by the political industrial complex of both political parties, election cycle after election cycle, in order to elect whichever side can convince Americans to hate the other side more. And the results are always the same. No matter which way the political pendulum swings, Republican or Democrat, nothing ever gets better for the common American man or woman.
And we're going to need to prepare in the meantime to wake people up. And that means to have conversations about the very real possibility that we may be called on some level to suffer, friends. I think that's really conspicuous by its absence, that conversation. Are we ready truly to suffer for what we believe, or are we always going to be choosing the lesser of two evils until we become evil ourselves? Are we ready to finally at some point say, okay, you got me, you're going to have to persecute me now because I'm not going any further in the direction of darkness, just not going to do it. And we need to prepare, first of all, in conversation, to stop tearing each other apart and talk about what's really important, keeping the faith. There's a song back in the 80s, we are fools to make war on our brothers in arms. Well, man, it is happening all over the internet, and indeed, it is foolish, truly foolish, which is why, like a broken record, I keep saying what I think is the most important human part of all this: unite the clans. Stop attacking people that you don't need to. Unite the clans. We do it in spades at the Chartres pilgrimage. Clans from literally all over the world, walking with a single purpose: the honor and glory of Christ the King, right? It's possible. We do it every year, right? So let's tell our children the Catholic stories this Christmas, friends. Let's give them the Catholic heroes. There are living and dead heroes. We can tell the stories right now. Let's live the traditions in our own homes. Let's pray the rosary every night. Let's fight for the Latin Mass. Let's make Christmas Catholic again. I'll put a link down here to how we do it in our home, which is to restore the old European, the old German Catholic traditions in the Catholic home at Christmas time. Wonderful fun, and it restores some semblance of a notion of what Christendom was like, right? You can do it in your own home. You can proclaim Christ King in your own home. In other words, let's together, friends, this Advent season, moving into the Christmas season, let's do whatever it takes to keep the faith. And as I always say, to never, ever become them.